She was born unwanted, the daughter of a disgraced queen, declared illegitimate, abandoned. Yet she would rise to become one of England's greatest monarchs. This is not just history. This is the untold journey of Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. Elizabeth was born on September 7th, 1533. A daughter, not the son King Henry VIII craved. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, had risked everything to become queen. Elizabeth's birth was a bitter letdown that triggered a storm of political and personal downfall. At age 2, Elizabeth's world shattered. Her mother was executed for treason and adultery. The little girl was stripped of her title and removed from court. Her mother's name was erased, but Elizabeth never forgot. Elizabeth never spoke of her mother, not once. The scandal was buried, but on her finger she wore a ring with portraits of herself and Anne Boleyn. It was her secret tribute to the woman whose blood ran in her veins. Despite her tainted birth, Elizabeth impressed her tutors. Latin, Greek, French, astronomy. She devoured knowledge, and yet her eyes revealed caution. She had learned young that even a princess could be disposable. After her father died, 14-year-old Elizabeth lived with Catherine Parr, Henry's sixth queen. It was a chance at family, but danger had followed her there. In the form of Thomas Seymour, her stepmother's charming but dangerous husband. Seymour began with tickles and compliments. Then it turned to late-night visits, touching whispers. Elizabeth, still a girl, woke earlier and earlier, just to avoid him. She was scared and surrounded. One morning, Catherine Parr found her husband holding Elizabeth in his arms. The Queen's silence broke. Elizabeth was sent away. She never saw her again. Months later, Catherine died. Seymour's ambitions grew darker. Thomas Seymour tried to kidnap the boy, King Edward VI. His plan? Force Edward to name Elizabeth heir, then marry her and take England. He was caught, tried for treason, and executed. Elizabeth was interrogated, but gave them nothing. When told of Seymour's death, Elizabeth showed no emotion, no tears, no tremble. She had learned early that power and vulnerability cannot share the same room. In 1553, Elizabeth's half-sister Mary became queen. A fierce Catholic, Mary launched a bloody crusade to reverse the Reformation. Elizabeth, a Protestant, was thrown in the Tower of London, accused of conspiracy. The axe hovered dangerously close. For nearly a year, Elizabeth endured isolation and interrogation, but she played the game flawlessly. No confessions, no emotion, she survived. When released, she returned to court. But trust was a luxury she could never afford again. In 1558, Queen Mary died. Bells rang, crowds cheered. At just 25, Elizabeth was crowned Queen of England. A nation on the brink now looked to a woman, a survivor, for salvation. Men whispered, "A woman cannot rule. She's too emotional, too soft." But Elizabeth ruled with intellect, caution, and charm. She studied every man in her court like a chessboard, and she always played the long game. All eyes turned to one question: who would she marry? A foreign prince? An English noble? But Elizabeth knew what they didn't. Every marriage was a risk. Power shared could be power lost. There was one man, Robert Dudley, her childhood friend, her comfort, her joy. Court gossips whispered, but Elizabeth didn't care. With him she could laugh, something rare in a world full of masks. Dudley was married. His wife, Amy, lived apart and was often ill. Then she was found dead at the bottom of a staircase. No foul play could be proven, but scandal spread like wildfire. The Queen's love became her liability. Elizabeth cut ties. Publicly, she could not risk the crown. When Dudley confronted her in court, she snapped, "I will have one mistress and no master." The Virgin Queen was born not out of purity, but power. Her cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, had a strong Catholic claim to the English throne. After scandal and rebellion, Mary fled to England seeking Elizabeth's protection, but she brought with her danger and prophecy. Mary became a symbol for Catholic rebellion. Then came a plot, a letter planning Elizabeth's murder. Whether forged or not, it was enough. With heavy heart, Elizabeth signed Mary's death warrant. They never met. In 1586, a major Catholic conspiracy, the Babington Plot, aimed to kill Elizabeth and place Mary, Queen of Scots, on the throne. The threat was real. The kingdom held its breath. Elizabeth's tolerance had ended. Elizabeth delayed for months, but in the end, Mary was executed. A queen sentenced by a queen. Elizabeth later wept in private, not just for Mary, but for what power had turned her into. The storm wasn't over. Spain, the world's superpower, prepared to invade. Elizabeth's Protestant England stood alone, but she wouldn't hide. Instead, she rallied her troops, dressed in armor, and spoke like a warrior queen. In 1588, the Spanish Armada sailed to crush England, but with sharp strategy, superior ships, and wild storms, the English crushed the fleet. Spain returned home defeated. England had become a naval power. While war raged, Elizabeth invested in mines. She sponsored explorers like Francis Drake and supported playwrights like Shakespeare. Her reign sparked the English Renaissance, a golden age of discovery and creativity. After surviving smallpox, Elizabeth began wearing white lead makeup to hide her scars. Her portraits grew more idealized, never aging, never faltering. She became both woman and myth. The famous Darnley portrait became her eternal image. Elizabeth had artists copy it for decades, only changing gowns and jewels. Her face was frozen in time, untouchable, undying. By the late 1590s, Elizabeth had ruled for over 40 years. Her trusted advisors had died. The new generation saw her as distant. She buried her last love, Robert Dudley, with tears no one saw. In March 1603, Queen Elizabeth lay in her chambers, refusing food, refusing to sleep. She stood for hours, afraid if she lay down, she wouldn't rise. Eventually, she surrendered. England's greatest monarch passed in silence. She ruled alone, loved fiercely, trusted few. She transformed a fragile kingdom into a global force. Her name is etched in every page of history, not as a woman who reigned, but as a monarch who endured. Elizabeth trusted few. Her court was a maze of secrets, whispers, and hidden enemies. She built a network of spies, ensuring that betrayal never reached her throne without her knowing first. Her spy master, Sir Francis Walsingham, uncovered plots before they took shape. One word from him could save or end a life. Together they turned intelligence into an art form. Foreign kings scoffed until they met her. Elizabeth could charm, threaten, or stall with a single glance. She was no man's puppet and no man's fool. Elizabeth wrote thousands of letters, sharp, clever, and often full of coded meanings. She wielded words like weapons, turning ink into strategy. She entertained suitors from France, Spain, Austria, and beyond, not out of love but leverage. Marriage became her political shield and sword. She loved the theater. In stories she found truth. In poetry she found mirrors. In Shakespeare's heroines she saw reflections of her own battles. The court was more than a place. It was a performance. Every glance, gift, and dance was part of a larger game, and Elizabeth choreographed it all. Her white makeup wasn't just vanity, it was armor. Behind every painted face was a message. The queen never weakened, never aged, never broke. She ruled without marrying, without heirs, without sharing her crown. Her heart belonged to England, or perhaps to no one at all. The memories of Anne Boleyn, Seymour, Dudley, they lingered. She rarely spoke of them, but in her quiet chambers their echoes remained. She kept England out of constant war, not through force, but through fear and finesse. Diplomacy became her most reliable blade. Her reign wasn't perfect. Plague, famine, riots, they came and went like seasons. But she endured, and so did her people. Every decision wore on her, every execution haunted her, but her will, unbreakable. She believed she was chosen, and she ruled like it. Pearls for purity, suns for divine favor, serpents for wisdom. Every outfit was a message, every portrait a sermon without words. Toward the end, she laughed less. Her dances slowed, but when she smiled, truly smiled, those who saw it said it felt like summer breaking through clouds. She trusted none, except Cecil. William Cecil guided her for decades. When he died, she mourned like for a brother, perhaps the only man she ever truly needed. Her strength waned, her speeches grew shorter, her silences grew longer. She began to speak of stars and sleep and letting go. She never named an heir, but she left signs, whispers, and when she died, the crown passed peacefully to James, son of Mary, Queen of Scots. When she rose to power, England was fractured and poor. When she died, it was a world power, proud, unified, reborn. Elizabeth lived, ruled, and died on her own terms. She bent to no king, answered to no husband. She was England's lion-hearted queen. After her death, statues rose across the realm, not of a bride or mother, but of a queen unbending. England didn't remember her as a woman. They remembered her as a legend. Her speeches echoed through time, not for grandeur, but clarity. "I may have the body of a weak woman," she once said, "but I have the heart and stomach of a king." An entire era carries her name, the Elizabethan Age. It was a time of poetry, fire, exploration, and transformation, and at its center stood one woman. From scandal and shadows, Elizabeth rose like a phoenix. She turned pain into power, doubt into legacy. Her story isn't just about rule, it's about rising again and again. Her portraits were never just portraits. They hid messages. Roses for peace, swords for strength, globes for dominion. Elizabeth didn't just wear symbols. She became them. Elizabeth bore no children, but she called her people her children. Her voice reached every corner of the land. She became the mother of a nation without giving birth. She rarely spoke of Anne Boleyn, but everyone could see the ghost. The ambition, the intelligence, the danger. Elizabeth had inherited everything, including the wounds. She never acted, yet she commanded every stage. Shakespeare's heroines, strong, clever, tragic, bore her fingerprints. He never wrote a play about her. He didn't have to. She was surrounded by courtiers, yet deeply alone. Power gave her everything and took everything away. At night, she sat in silence, listening only to the ticking of her own crown. Centuries have passed, but she never truly left. Her story lingers in paintings, in books, in the soul of England. She ruled not just a nation, but time itself. Ambassadors from Rome to Moscow reported her every word. The English Queen, they called her, cunning, unreadable, brilliant. They watched her like a storm on the horizon. While Europe bled over religion, Elizabeth refused to choose sides. She said, "I will not make windows into men's souls." In her silence, she found unity. They called her Gloriana, the Golden Queen, not for gold, but for what she gave: peace, pride, and possibility. Her reign was a sunrise. She could debate scholars, outwit spies, write poetry, and remember every name in court. Her mind was not a match for her time, it was ahead of it. Elizabeth was the final Tudor monarch. With her died a dynasty, but a new England was born. She ended something old and opened something vast. Plots, poisons, pretenders, they circled her for decades. But Elizabeth danced with danger like it was court music, always one step ahead. She left behind no children, but thousands of pages, letters, speeches, poems. Her words remain crisp and sharp as when she spoke them. She wore the crown with pride and pain. Sometimes it felt heavier than steel, but she never dropped it, not once. Even in old age, her eyes blazed with that same spark, the one that once defied kings, charmed enemies, and ruled an empire. They say her last official portrait wasn't accurate. It showed youth, grace, perfection. But if they had painted truth, it would have shown steel, scars, and a soul forged in fire.